Well, good day. It's a real pleasure and privilege to be with you today. It's a beautiful fall day, kind of cold, but it's expected this time of year. We've had an extended summer anyways. We're delighted to be in stage 2 of our COVID designation, which brings us up to a possible quantity of 200 people in our cathedral on weekends masses. And it's a great improvement over the 50. In 1958, when they did the church over and added baptistry and all that sort of thing, they say that our church was increased to capacity from 650 to 800. So that would give us a capacity of 200 at 25%. And so which is a great help to us. We don't have to probably think about forwarding people over to the assembly place, extra people. It's going to be a lot easier, I think, for the Knights of Columbus in their marvelous work that they've helped us not to have to divert people out of the church. And we're very happy to have that new classification the governor has set up for us as this county of Yakima. We still have to be careful. We still have to observe that social distancing. And the way the cathedral is set up right now, that can be done very easily if you just follow the directions and use the pews that are designated for active use. We also have to be careful about making sure that we wear masks every time we come to anything that's associated with church, or even when you go out to business to go shopping or anything like that. It's really a concern for other people, not only for ourselves, but for other people when we do that. And it shows as Catholic Christians, we need to give the example of taking care of one another. So I'm very happy that actually the governor has designated us into the second phase of stage 2 of our COVID preparation. Today happens to be on Friday, I think it's the 16th of October, and a happy birthday to our bishop. He was born just a few months before I became a priest, and I just missed baptizing him by just a few months, but we want to wish him a happy birthday. He's still young and active, and wish him many happy and fruitful years more. In a couple of weeks, we celebrate the Feast of All Saints on a Sunday, and that feast takes over the, November 1st, takes over the Sunday observance. And so we'll celebrate on the 1st of November, the Feast of All Saints. It's not only for all the saints who are canonized and recognized by the Universal Church, but it's a reminder to us that we're called to be saints too. And all those people that we've known, particularly in our own parish community here, who are really saints, who have been saints and who have died, and I'm sure are with God this day because they've led exemplary lives. So many of you still do that, of course, and we're all striving to be saints. And we ask the intercession of all the saints for our parish community, particularly on the day of their feast. Monday, the 2nd of November, is the commemoration of All Souls. I pray for all our deceased. There's going to be a mailing this coming week on the 22nd of October. It's going to include an envelope, a small envelope. If you want to, you can list your people who have died and send it back to us. And hopefully by the 3rd of November, we can place these envelopes on our altar, and they'll be remembered. All those people who have died will be remembered at all the masses celebrated in our cathedral. So it's a pious practice that we've had here for many years, and I hope you continue to observe that and be concerned about our unity, not only with the saints in heaven, but also with all those who have died and who are on the way to sainthood. We also have an altar for the dead in our baptistry area, which will be set up on the last Sunday of October, which is the Feast of Christ the King. We always celebrate that. Many years ago on this same feast, during Mass, a transient person came in and burned our chapel. If you remember correctly, he got angry at me because I was being inclusive in my words of my homily and including everybody in the people that can come into our church. And he accosted me after Mass that day, probably 20 years ago by now at least, but said that he was so angry by the words that I said. And I said, well, I was trying to be inclusive. I was trying to tell that everybody was invited to come to our church. It didn't matter what their color or race or language or sexual orientation. Oh, that's what he said. Oh, those are the words that make me angry, he said. He went down and bought a gallon of gas and he poured it in the chapel and on the altar and down the main aisle and on the organ and lit a fire and ran out. Well, I heard a year or two later that he was captured down in Nevada somewhere and was serving a prison term for something else. But that's history for us too. Luckily, the chapel structure was not damaged. It was merely the inside of it was kind of burned out, and as you remember, it was charred and everything had to be replaced. But it was a fortunate fire in a sense that we came out with a chapel that was much more beautiful and devotional than we had before. But that was on the Feast of Christ the King, which is the last Sunday of October. And we will have, again, adoration that afternoon, as you'll read about in the bulletins next week. And we'll also begin adoration, hopefully within the next few weeks. We're putting out a list very soon. People can sign up. There has to be people there, has to be somebody there all the time in the chapel for adoration. We plan to have it on Fridays again from 11:30 after Mass till about 6 o'clock. We'll have benediction. So just keep that in mind. We're getting back a little bit more to normal by reinstating that adoration every Friday. Our concern is about the Lady of Guadalupe services and the celebration. It's a huge feast, especially for our Hispanic people and Spanish-speaking people. And I don't know how we're going to cover it this year and be able to do it because we have throngs of people that come to the cathedral. And it's not allowed to do this. We're not going to be allowed to do this this year. So Father Jesus Mariscal, our new associate, and myself, we're talking about probably streaming something, but also making it available, home celebrations available. Every Spanish-speaking family that I know of has an image of Our Lady of Guadalupe in their homes. And it might be that we have to transfer big celebrations to individual home celebrations just because we can't risk huge crowds coming into our building and be risk being shut down. So we had a little Emma, our education coordinator, kind of took a survey and found out that only about half of our Spanish families have computers that they can actually tune into a streaming Mass and celebration. So we don't want to exclude anyone from this, and what we might do, and we're striving to do even citywide, is to have some way of celebrating this great feast at Our Lady of Guadalupe at home, individually with families. We have the same problem coming up for Christmas, of course. It probably won't get into the next phase. We'll probably be still in phase 2. We're lucky to be in it right now. And we'll probably still have a limit in people that can come to church. And we're talking about the problems that we face there too, of having crowds, particularly for that Saturday evening Mass that we have on Christmas Eve. But we're discussing that right now and seeing what we can do to make sure that everybody that wants to come will be welcome in our cathedral. November 6th, by the way, it's a couple of weeks away yet, is the 69th anniversary of the dedication of our cathedral as a cathedral. We were St. Paul Parish for the first many years of our institution here as a church, as a parish. From 1914 until 1951, we were St. Paul Parish. And in 1951, on the 6th of November, this church, our beautiful church, was designated the cathedral for the central part of Washington, the 7 counties of central Washington. And of course, our first bishop was Bishop Doherty. A happy memory, that all kinds of memories, but and he took over the diocese and assumed rule or reign over the diocese back in 1951. And November the 6th is that liturgical celebration of our church being named a cathedral. Again, I urge you once more to sign up for that Catholic Netflix, and also the computer and website and cell phone way of communication for our parish community. Both of these resources are listed on our website, right following this transmission of our conversation today. You can check it out. Please sign up. It's a way of better communication. It's a way we can enrich ourselves. It doesn't cost anything. That's the main thing. It's really wonderful having new relationships, a relationship renewed, I should say, with people I haven't seen since last March, who are beginning to come to Mass. Again, there's no obligation. Our bishop has extended his dispensation from the obligation of Sunday Mass right through this time of that we're concerned about the COVID, and there's no obligation to come to Mass, but it's so nice when people do come. The cathedral, as you know, is set up so that we can accommodate between 150 and 200 people every day. And because pews are marked off, you can only use so many, and every other pew's marked off, and we ask people to make sure they follow social distancing and keep 6 feet apart. We can do this. And we remind you again, particularly at communion time, to be assured and be conscious, I should say, of that social distancing, not to crowd up. And actually, as you go out of Mass too, the same way, don't just hang out in the courtyard, but it'd be delightful if we could gather together, but we can't. We're not allowed to do that yet. So just be cautious. We want to make sure that we're not a source of any conflagration or great eruption of this COVID again, and we don't want to be the source of that, any one of us. That's why we wear masks. That's why we keep that social distancing. That's why our cathedral is limited in who can come in, how many people can come in. We're open, as we notice, to all people. We always have been, and we welcome everyone too, of all different colors and races and all different types of people, all the time. And you, as the parish of St. Paul Cathedral, have always been a very welcoming and a wonderful congregation. As I mentioned in this letter coming up this next week, I'm really pleased, proud, and humbled to be privileged to be your pastor. And I thank you for your continued contributions and help. The Knights of Columbus particularly I want to thank, because their continuing work they're so faithful to it every Sunday. They're here for every Mass. We still have to sign in, just in case something happened, that we have a record of who comes to Mass. We only keep those records for a couple of weeks, but we need to be able to inform you if there is an outbreak of the COVID at the Mass that you participate in. And so we need to do that continually. Knights of Columbus have been extremely valuable in helping us, and we're really indebted to them as a wonderful group of faithful witnesses to Jesus Christ. Again, I want to thank you who contribute regularly to make sure that our financial health is strong, which it is. And we want to thank you for that immensely. The annual Catholic Appeal starts in another week or two. And again, I recommend this to you. It's really important that we as church support our diocese, because we are the diocese. And the diocese has an obligation beyond parish to help spread the good news of God's love, not only through a parish community, but through the whole part of Central Washington and beyond. So it's coming up very soon. You know all about it. You've heard about it for years, those of you who have been around for a while. If you're newcomers, it's really a wonderful opportunity to share in the mission of the greater church, the Diocese of Yakima. And we urge you to prayerfully discern what your donation will be. We'd like to have every single person, whether you give even only $1, they can give anything, have every single person involved to have a share in that mission of the bishop and the Diocese of Yakima. So really keep that in mind, and the next week or so, prayerfully discern what you're going to give. Our parish tithes every month, as you know. We give 5% of our weekend income for needs external to ourselves, and we urge you to do the same thing. Whatever the percentage you pick, you choose to be a tithing person, a person that recognizes the responsibility of good stewardship and sharing the blessings that God gives us every day. And don't give up. Things that can get a little bit burdensome. People get depressed. People are kind of down. They're stressed by this COVID emergency. And yet, don't give up. God is always with us. He's with us today. He's with us every single day of our lives. Don't forget that. And now it's my privilege and pleasure to ask God's blessing upon you and your families. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.